The Dirt Talk podcast. This is not a Monday episode. This is a Thursday episode.
Thursday episode is a special edition.
Special edition. What is do we have a title for special edition? Have we come up with a clever name for this? Aaron's Adventures?
I do kind of like something like that.
Aaron's Audacious Adventures.
Adventures. Yeah.
Some alliteration.
Aaron's advantageous adventures.
Yeah. Aaron's Advanced Adventures.
Advanced, yeah. Jeez. Aaron's all day adventures because it's typically all damn day.
Yeah. This one was gnarly, dude.
Mm-hmm.
As far as all day, it was. Yeah, this one.
Can you give some context about what this one is?
So this episode is going to be a summary of my recent Europe trip. It is a lot of content to discuss, so I feel like we ought to talk about it because I feel like people want to hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
And my schedule these days does not allow for easy podcast scheduling.
Well, that too.
So with those two things combined together, here we are today talking about my recent Europe trip.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't noticed, if you don't follow me on Instagram or the social media, I recently went to Europe.
Or if you're listening to this months later,
Mm-hmm.
just for some context, Aaron recently went to Europe.
Yes. Because I feel like that's the first thing you need to do when you go to Europe. You need to make sure everybody knows that you went to Europe.
Yeah, it's an important thing you need to brag about.
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. Have you been to Europe? No, I haven't. Until now. I have now.
Well, there's always I find people do kind of like parody videos of, things people say after they just got back from Europe. It's like, oh, sorry, that's a euro. Sorry, I've got American dollars. Don't worry. Or we'll have some vino. Sorry, wine.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
I want to smack those people, but I'm trying to be funny and talk about it every chance I get.
Well, you are drinking bubbly water a lot now.
I am.
So...
Yeah, but that's every time. Every time I go, because that's not just a Europe thing.
Yeah.
You go Central America,
everywhere else,
South America, yeah, Middle East. But I wanted to go to Europe to expand my horizons and see how other people did things. We've seen a lot of the United States, as we've talked about. I've been to 47 of the 50 states. I've seen work in almost all of those. From a
47?
Yes.
Wow.
We've gone to the Middle East. I've gone to China for construction related things.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always seen Europe. They seem very advanced and very refined. So I thought, let's go see how they do work because I think the United States can learn a lot from them. That theory was proven correct. The United States can learn a lot from the Europeans because from a construction standpoint, because they are so refined and well thought out that it is upsetting. It's not like it here.
Well, to be fair, they've been doing it for 1,000 years longer.
They have a head start. Yes, they have a head start. And that is kind of the reason behind it, but also it's a global economy now, so we don't have that much of an excuse.
It's true. It's not like, well, we've got a lot of years to make up.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's kind of evened out in that sense.
Yeah. So I made the trip up with the help of Chris from Awesome Earth Movers. If you guys read the magazine or follow his stuff is all over the damn internet all the time. If you look at heavy equipment related stuff, asked him, hey, who did you talk to? How did you arrange everything in Switzerland? Because that's where I wanted to go. Switzerland, there's all these demolition companies out there, and I see them online all the time. Eberhard, Aregger, Keybag, and I'm like, I want to go see these guys because for whatever reason, there's just always big stuff to tear down in Switzerland, and let's go check it out. So Chris connects me with Hugo and Urs and Marco and all the folks over at all these companies. And we put together this trip. And then they also say, Paul, who helps Chris and does construction media as well, he also says you ought to go to Liebherr because from Switzerland, from where you'll be in Zurich, they have the mining excavator factory in Colmar, France. And I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
Because mining excavators the Libero mining excavators are said to be the Cadillac of mining excavator. And I would love to see where they're moving.
Oh, yeah.
So I contact Libero. We arrange a visit for France and Germany. So everything shakes out after a few months of planning. We decide to do 3 days in Zurich, 4 days, because we landed in the morning. So we got a Sunday to just check things out, which instead we saw Demolition, of course.
Pretty cool.
3 days of 3 demolition companies in Switzerland, then 1 day with Liebherr in France, 1 day with Liebherr in Germany, and then 1 day hanging out in Munich before we left. Because I like to explore another city before I go home, whenever I travel abroad. That's just a good thing to do. So this was not a paid trip. We paid for the whole thing. We weren't doing any paid work whatsoever. And I like that. I very rarely do paid work nowadays, surprisingly. We after the company has grown, we have teams that do all the paid work that we have to do. I get to go wherever things are cool. So Europe is cool, create great content, create more brand awareness for BuildWit, create connections that weren't otherwise there. So there's a lot of value there, but we were not paid for it, which I prefer because then there's no expectations. We can just show up and do whatever the heck we wanted to do. So it was me, I brought my cameras, and then I brought Angel with me, one of the OG BuildWit, part of the OG BuildWit fam, for the sake of the vlog. So everything that we did in Europe will also be on YouTube as part of the vlog, the BuildWit vlog. I think we have 7 videos to make that are all pretty long.
Yeah.
And I think the first ones will be out, maybe the first ones by the time this is out. The first one could be out.
Okay.
So we get on a plane and we fly from Nashville to Zurich. We fly Nashville, Philadelphia, Zurich. The night before, Angel and I got way too lit. We drank so much the night before.
You're just excited, man. You're excited.
It wasn't excitement. It was just total stupidity. So we show up to the airport hungover. We fly to Zurich. We get in at about 9 a.m. And the other cool thing about the timing of this trip was I timed it so that we would be in Europe the same time the Stutsman folks, Shea Stutsman and company, would be there as well from Colorado. He has an excavation company in Aspen, and he wanted to go see how the Germans or the Swiss do demolition to help inform his business, which is very smart.
Yeah.
Very, very smart. I was really impressed with how curious he was.
Well, that's a lesson you can't learn just over the internet.
No. And so he flew halfway around the world to go learn how other companies did things better than he does so that he can do them better. Like that's, man, if only we had more of that in this industry. He could learn, a lot of contractors could learn a lot from this guy. So we show up, we immediately put our stuff down at the hotel and go to a bridge demolition project. They were demolishing a railroad bridge, and they had to shut the street down. So they only had Friday night to Sunday night, or maybe Monday morning, to complete all of the work. And so Eberhard had 2 352s on this narrow street. We walk up and there's like a crowd of people all around the job site. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? I thought, I don't know, maybe there's some bar or restaurant or something like that that's super popular. But no, it was all the people watching the construction and demolition because it was right there.
Yeah.
There was a fence set up, but the excavator, you could almost reach out and touch it since it was such a small work area. So within the 2 days, we got there when they were kind of cleaning up. Within the 2 days, they removed the bridge entirely. And the contractor had built the new bridge next to the old bridge. And so the next phase after the old bridge was gone would be them sliding the new bridge into place. So the new bridge was already built.
That's awesome. I feel like I've seen like, what are they called? Like not slow motion, but the option when you shoot it for like a whole day and
like time lapse.
Time lapse. Why can't I think of that word? I've seen time lapse video of that stuff before, and it's wild because you see them start taking this bridge down. You're like, what's happening here? And then all of a sudden it's like scoot, and it's in there.
Super cool. Typically, I haven't seen them build a bridge alongside of an old bridge and slide it in the United States. I know it's probably been done, but that's definitely more of a European thing.
what are the reasons for that?
Mostly space constraints. There's just not a lot of space over there. And
So they can't afford to, as in they can't afford to build it somewhere else and then bring it, or like it just.
I think they're just the whole European construction scene is just more refined and well thought out.
Sure.
And so I think that's one of those things. It's like, well, we could just accelerate the schedule. We could leverage the little bit of space we have.
Because they can build it without shutting the bridge down, or build most of it, right?
That's exactly it. So they built it on the side without disrupting the rail bridge, without disrupting the streets and the businesses around it. And then within a month's time, they replaced the bridge A to Z without disrupting anybody.
Was the bridge over a street or over a river?
It was over a street. Yeah. So we saw that. That was really, really cool. That was with Eberhard, the big Swiss demolition company. We had our first Swiss meal, which was very tasty down Zurich. Zurich might be one of my favorite cities I've ever visited. It is so pretty and clean and well thought out. And it's just a nice place.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a nice place. Switzerland overall, as you can probably imagine, absolutely spectacular.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any what's it called, a raclette meal there?
No.
So it's basically like a fondue except a griddle. And the idea is it's basically meats and veggies and then often potatoes and cheese, which, like, of course, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's like you cook the meats and veggies kind of like as you want a bite of it. And so it's just like all these bowls of raw. And it's like, I want a couple bites of this, couple bites of this, couple bites of this. And you just cook it on this like really hot thing. But it's like at a table and it's very social.
And in fairness, I did not really, I wasn't a super big fan of any of the food I had.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because it was all just like really heavy.
Yeah.
Really heavy. Everything was so heavy. And it was like, can I just have some leaves? And it's partially just my eating habits. But even like the Middle East, you'd go and you can just get meat. Like it's just meat. That's all you get is just meat. And here it wasn't like that. It was just everything had potatoes and sauce and
sauces, cheeses, potatoes.
Yeah, cheese and it was just everything was so heavy. But second day, we wake up in Zurich and we are with Aregger. So we go out to a big Aregger demolition site where they had their PC 750 and PC 800 demolishing a big concrete structure on top of an existing concrete parking garage. And in anywhere, those are massive demolition machines. So they were on top of the existing structure, but they weren't completely demolishing the structure. So they were going to keep the parking garage down below, but they wanted to get rid of the building up top.
Oh, so the garage was below ground.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, subterranean. So we got to see those big machines, and it's interesting in demolition. You can configure the booms in different ways. So they have all different lengths and configurations for each demolition machine.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of had like the medium size stick and boom on there with a concrete processor, and they were just munching on the concrete, just munch.
You've posted a couple times about that. I think somebody maybe had asked. Actually, I think it was on our Slack channel. You'd posted a picture of it, and somebody said, "What does that do?" And you're just like, munch concrete.
Yes, just goes nom nom.
And then once you see it, you're like, "Oh yeah, obviously that's what that's for."
Yeah, it serves two purposes. You're removing the structure and you're pulverizing the concrete so you can load it out and recycle it simultaneously.
So is it grabbing the concrete as it kind of munches it, or
you grab it and then it just clamps down and smashes it while you're going.
Okay.
So and then it can also shear rebar.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
just like pluck it.
Yeah, so you can shear steel with it as well. Sometimes smaller rebar. So the interesting thing is, this was a big difference between Europe and the United States. All of the concrete on that project would have been recycled in the United States, but it would have been crushed and turned into road base. And sometimes they can't even use it as road base because the DOT won't pass it as road base. Mm-hmm. So you have to find some use for it. Whereas in Europe, they use old concrete in new concrete. It's a key ingredient in new concrete. Like in the United States, we do recycled asphalt pavement wrap. So we'll mix a certain percentage of old asphalt into new asphalt while we're making the new asphalt. The Europeans do the same thing with concrete. So all of the concrete gets hauled off, brought to facilities that recycle 100% of it. Not just as crushed material, but as concrete.
How much of that process is for cost-saving measures, and how much of that process is for like sustainability efforts?
It's
Or
both.
Kind of both.
To make sustainability is super noble, but it has to make sense financially.
Mhm.
It has to make business sense. So until there's a business case, companies don't act sustainably. I hate to, pull the
Yeah, it's
pull
not
the-
just
pull
for
the sheet off that one.
Yeah.
But and it's not that simple, but a business has to function at the end of the day, or else it doesn't matter how sustainable a business is. If it goes out of business, then what's the point?
Mhm.
So the thing is about Switzerland is the government is very particular about recycling, and there's no new landfills being permitted, so they don't throw things away in landfills. So everything is recycled, especially the entirety of buildings.
Mhm.
So they'll recycle, at least they said typically around like 95% of 90,
Wow.
95% of every building is 100% completely recycled.
I'm sure there's full industry just for like the recycling of building materials.
Yeah. And these companies have whole sorting facilities themselves. So they haul everything to the sorting facility instead of sorting it on site. And then the sorting facility sorts everything from there. And there's a very small percentage of waste. But that waste doesn't go to a landfill. It typically goes to be incinerated for either power or to help produce something like cement.
Interesting.
Yeah. Whereas in the United States, especially in a place where you have a lot of land available and landfills are easy to permit, all of it just goes to the landfill. You'll say salvage your inert material, like your concrete, your steel,
Mhm.
so on and so forth, but all of the junk will just go right to the landfill.
Just because right now in America there's not infrastructure to like do that.
To recycle it.
Yeah.
And there's not a financial incentive to recycle
Well, yeah,
it
that's the
because
other part.
it's just so cheap, $20-$30 a ton to throw in the landfill. Why would I spend the time and energy to try to recycle it when I can just haul it to the landfill?
Mhm.
So we got to see Aregger. It was terrifying to go to that project because we went in the parking garage underneath the machines working, and you could feel the whole structure shaking because these are massive machines. It's a PC 750.
Well, yeah, it's way more than any cars that are stopping on top of it or anything like that.
And they're not just machines stomping around up top. They're machines literally destroying the structure, chewing away at the structure.
Yeah.
So you could feel the whole building shake and hear the like right up above you. And the whole time we were all just like, I don't want to be here right now because I just saw how big those machines are. And I know this is rated as a bomb shelter.
Yeah, you might be able to still do the math in your head.
Yeah.
But you're like,
I know this is perfectly safe, but it does not feel that way at all, especially because the whole place is shaking right now. But that's the interesting thing is Europe, they require in buildings a certain amount of subterranean space to use as a bomb shelter.
Okay.
Which I didn't know. Or they have in the past. I don't know if they still do, but that's what I learned. And just keep in mind, all of this is what I learned, which doesn't mean it's correct, but this is what
in your experience.
In my experience, this is what I've heard. So we go see that Aregger site, and then we go to the second Aregger site, which is where they incinerate trash, a big incinerator right in downtown Zurich. You wouldn't really know. It just had a big stack, but otherwise it didn't look like a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they had the A-Rex, which was the biggest demolition machine in Europe. It was a big Liebherr, like 9200, I think, base model machine, and it's a 300-ton demolition excavator. And the thing was chewing through a foundation that had more steel than concrete in it, and it was just munching away. But the most interesting thing, and I think I talked about this in the other episode when I talked about Europe, is all the machines have OilQuick on it. So they can take different attachments off and put other attachments on without having to disconnect and reconnect hoses. So even a 300-ton demolition excavator had OilQuick on it, and it would switch between the hammer, which was the biggest hydraulic hammer I've ever seen, and then the processor, and then the bucket, and be able to grab the different tools that he needed while he was digging through this footing, so he wouldn't just have a hammer on all day. And it's like, oh, shoot, I don't want the hammer on anymore. So you have to get out, and it's like 20-minute process to the hose is that big, disconnect them, and good luck. There's none of that on a piece of equipment that big. So that was super cool.
What's the time it takes to switch?
A minute.
Shoot. Okay.
So 30 seconds to drop the tool, and then you pick it up, and then you make sure it's connected, and you're ready to rock and roll. It's insanely effective. It's insanely effective. And they believe in it so much they'll have it on a machine that size, which is completely insane.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't configured when we were there to the full weight, because the full weight is when it has this whole big arm on it when it's really high up. It was just chewing away at the foundation, so it kind of had like that medium configuration, but it was spectacular to see. And we got some pretty cool pictures with it. The operator stopped. We got to walk around it, walk in the cab. It was awesome. It was just the whole trip. It was amazing how open all of these companies were to having us on their sites and to showing us everything and collaborating with one another. I mean, like Eberhard and Aregger, they compete, but they're working with each other at the same time, and they're all on the same team together. And it's a lot more collaborative in Europe than it is in the United States. And even it's a lot more collaborative from a general contractor and owner standpoint. So the liability is shared between everybody doing the project rather than all of the liability just being shifted onto the contractor like it is in the United States. So you get just a much more collaborative environment as a result. And it was obvious when going out to these sites. So that was Aregger. It was really cool to see that big machine. I'd seen it all over the internet for years now, and to see it in person, I'm like, yes, that's the one right there. That's
like
it.
It's that specific machine's the only one, or like that?
It's the only one of that kind.
Line.
So Libera's built a few of them, and there's one more in Europe, I feel like.
Okay.
But there's not very many.
Like it is a sight to behold if you see it. It's like, this is rare. You don't find this. Okay.
And it's branded in Aregger colors. And that's another thing. Every machine is branded.
Oh, that's cool.
Every machine is custom painted. Every machine. So it's white, it's neon yellow, it's orange, it's red, it's purple, it's blue, it's pink. They're all painted different colors. And I like Eberhard. Eberhard's like a turquoise or like a seafoam green and a highlighter yellow. And so they'll paint the whole counterweight Eberhard, and it'll be Eberhard on it. All the trucks are the exact same color, everything. All the people, they're in the Eberhard jackets, Eberhard pants. You can tell what company someone works for and what machine belongs to which company just based on the colors.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty... Do you think there's a reason that isn't necessarily as popular in America?
I think a lot of it comes down to the hyper-competitive nature of the industry, which drives profitability down. With less profit, you have less money to go invest in your equipment, for example. So it's not unheard of in the industry.
Because, I mean, obviously,
in
we work
America,
with a lot of companies who do paint their equipment, but...
it's starting to become more common, but on like a percentage basis, it's almost 0.0%.
Not every company puts cow spots.
No. But Europe, super common. I mean, even just taking the train through the few countries we did, you just see equipment everywhere. And it was all painted. It was all branded.
Cool.
In every country we went to. So next we went to Hurleyman, which is a smaller demolition company in Zurich. We met with the owner's son who studied in the United States, funny enough, and actually lived in Phoenix.
Really?
Yeah. And then he's like, yeah, I had a job in Miami lined up, and I honestly wanted to stay in Miami. But then my dad called me, and he's like, you need to come help run the company. I'm like, okay.
I guess.
And I like stories like that where the kid found their own way, but then they get drawn back into the business. So it wasn't their first choice. So I feel like they're just on a little more of a solid footing when they've tried to do something else and have come back to the business than have just only been in the business their whole lives.
Mm-hmm. There is a certain bit of like perspective that you can't gain just being in the family business your whole life.
Yeah. It's so super good guy, They had a Volvo demolition excavator working there by some Swiss cows, which I was just mind blown by, up on the hill overlooking the lake. Beautiful. Another amazing thing is all of the demolition machines are demolition-specific machines. There was not one machine that was not purpose-built for demolition that I saw doing demolition. In the United States, typically you just get whatever you get.
Yeah, we've talked about that before.
Yeah. Whereas this one, always custom configuration for boom, stick length, different tools, all the different tools you can imagine on the site, water, dust suppression, onboard, tilting cab, increased counterweight, variable width undercarriage. It's all purpose made for whatever task is at hand. So we got to see that. Then we went to a landfill that was kind of an older landfill. And as they explained it, the problem is they don't permit new landfills anymore. So landfill space is really hard to come by. And sometimes you do have to throw stuff away. So what they're doing and what they were doing at this landfill is they were digging through the landfill, putting it into a processing facility, sorting everything, and recycling 2/3 of what was sitting in that landfill.
Wow.
And then putting the extra 1/3 back to create, to recycle the material, to create value from the material just sitting there, and to create more landfill space for additional waste coming into that facility, which I thought was crazy.
Yeah, well, you would think that, you know, once it's in a landfill, like that's the end of it. It's just like, well, we had no other option, so it's here.
Yeah.
And instead, they're like, well, even with that scenario, we're still going to find a lot of value here.
That's it. And they ended up recycling on average 2/3 of the material
Jeez,
in that
man.
landfill. How crazy is that?
Well, and if you're doing it that way, in theory, you could make a killing going to old landfills, right?
Yeah.
Or at least make it profitable.
It's like, why can't it be that? Why can't it work for your business too?
That's pretty cool.
Super cool.
You made a comment about all these purpose-built machines.
Mm-hmm.
Did it seem to you, in your experience there, and just in the conversations you had, that a lot of these companies seem to have like an especially large fleet?
They had big fleets. Yeah. I mean,
like if you have so many specific machines, you're gonna that do all these different things. You're gonna need more machines.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
They had a ton of machines, but well, see, they're purpose built for demolition, but they're also, you can also configure them as a normal excavator
without like any huge like times off to reconfigure.
Yes.
Okay.
So and so that's the thing is it's all, equipment's all about utilization.
Yeah.
You want to utilize it as much as you can. So contractors will use a machine that's not really built for the specific job to increase their utilization, because if that's the machine they have, then why not? But the nice thing is with these demolition machines is it's the perfect job for a demolition application, for a high reach application, for a smaller demolition job in which you don't need a high reach. And then if you don't have demolition work, you can go put it to work doing excavation work, for example, by just putting a normal stick and boom on it.
And it's not like that machine has to be, you know, out of commission for weeks at a time, right? To switch that?
No, you just switch it, and the stick and boom is already sitting on site.
That's awesome.
Just bring everything to the site so that you can configure that machine however you want to throughout the life cycle of that project, which makes you far more effective.
I was going to say, does that approach mean you don't have to do as much like pre-planning, or is it just different pre-planning? If you'd like kind of know when we get to the site where we can make the decision there, or which tool is the right tool for this day's task or whatever.
A lot of it comes down to what the operator wants to use. So you give more control and power to the operator, the one actually doing the work, which is pretty cool. I mean, they'll switch their tools sometimes 100, 200 times in a day.
Shoot, just like 5 minutes on here, 10 minutes with this.
That's it.
Whatever.
That every single site I went to, it was nonstop. Switch tool, switch tool, switch tool, switch tool. Every single site, because they want to use the right tool for whatever is going on at that moment. And it's just it's a smarter way to do things. And there are some companies in the United States with that capability, but it's very rare. Like I watch Demolition around here, man. Woof. It is painful.
Yeah.
Painful to watch sometimes because you can just tell that they're just trying to give her hell with what they got. And typically it's just clapped out equipment.
You mentioned like the OilQuick thing. Are you able to like custom order equipment from manufacturers that have that, or is that like definitely a third party thing?
So I'll get to that in the Liebherr.
Got it. Okay.
In the Liebherr visit. But that night we fortunately got to go see the airport job like I talked about last minute. So we didn't sleep at all, went to bed at 4 a.m. We woke up, started at 8 the next day to visit with Eberhard. We visited some Eberhard demolition projects, which were really, really cool. We saw Eberhard's shop and main facility. Their facility is so big, they have a mobile tower crane to sort stuff in their yard. They have so many different tools, that they have a tower crane to help choose and select tools and put them on trucks.
Jeez.
It's ridiculous.
Because like it's a full-time job for somebody just to sort that way or to like, set up, or we need these attachments on this truck bed.
Every tool imaginable was there. Every single demolition tool imaginable. They also had their sorting facility there. So they haul all the demolition debris to their facility and sort it at their facility, which was pretty unique. We saw their concrete facility. And the crazy thing about the concrete facility is that's where they were hauling all the concrete from the airport project as well. So we got to see that crushing setup, and they had their 395, which is a made-up machine.
Yeah.
It didn't exist when they built that machine. Sorting and piling up concrete to get it ready for the next night where they come and shove a bunch more in there. So that was spectacular. Got to learn about the concrete manufacturing process and how they recycle concrete into their new concrete. Saw their quarry, and their quarry was sweet. Super nice. They load out on rail, and they had this automated loading system where the truck just drives up and the truck just gets loaded. Like there weren't any yard loaders or anything like that. It was all automated, which was pretty slick.
That's cool.
And then we wrapped up the day at Eberhard with their museum, which absolutely spectacular.
Like the company museum.
The company museum. And it's a whole history of the company and how they got started, and they had to go to Saudi Arabia, and you walk through the museum is kind of guided. Like, here's our first machine. And they had all the different machines they had used throughout the years, a lot of them restored. And so you get to learn about the company history. And then in the main part of the museum, there's all these antique machines that they've restored that are absolutely beautiful.
That's cool.
Beautiful, old machines, old track loaders, and all kinds of, like, a cable machine. And they had stuff for kids there where, you had little mini excavators that you could jump on and move sand around and a kid's play area.
Yeah.
And then upstairs, you kind of see through the glass window. It's like, oh, there's some construction models up there. That's pretty cool. And you walk up the stairs, and it's, I think, at least 3,000 construction models in glass cases. It was probably like at least $1 million in models.
Jeez.
In die-cast models.
Yeah.
Some of these models, and I didn't know this, but since Shay is really educated in the model space, he was like, yeah, that one's probably like $50,000. And it would be, a bulldozer that's like 12 inches long.
Yeah. Yeah, that tells you it's like a real bulldozer, not even comparable to the price. But you're like, $50,000 for what's essentially a toy?
Yeah. I mean, you could buy a pretty nice pickup truck at $50,000. And it was incredible, the scale and scope of the collection. And the crazy thing is, they were saying it's a few family members that own Eberhard. So we got to meet one of the Eberhard.
Oh, cool.
So we go out into the lobby. Like, I had to go pee or something like that. I'm with Angel, and this guy's standing in there. He's like, what are you guys doing here? Just out of curiosity, because the museum was closed. We were there with Eberhard, so we got to go hang out there.
Did he ask in English?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. but kind of in, like a
Yeah.
heavy accent. And like, oh, we're with yours, and we're just exploring it. And he's like, oh, that's pretty cool. And we're talking to him about what we do and so on and so forth. And I ask him, so what do you do? He's like, oh, I hang out here a lot and spend time here. I'm like, that's a really amazing model collection up there. Whose is it? Who put all that together? He's like, oh, I did. You're like, oh,
Wait. What's your name?
I see where this is going.
Mhm.
I get it. But apparently in the family, they have like over 10,000 models.
I mean, talk about like a passion passed back and forth or passed through the generations.
Dude,
That's wild.
I wouldn't even know where to start. And a lot of them are custom made
Mhm.
because I guess that's a big thing, is not just buying them, but custom building models, that's a whole subculture I don't understand. I
So-
appreciate for sure.
Are there people who get into like models of equipment, and is a big part of it putting it together too, or do they all just come fully put together?
I don't know. They come fully built,
Okay,
but some people are all into building the models.
got it. Like the models that we have like around here just came like that in the box.
Yeah, like I just bought that one, but people could build that from scratch, like in their garage.
Nuts.
Yeah, and I like looking at that. I wouldn't even know where do you even start on something like that? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What? But it was so much fun for me to learn about this whole world from people who were so into it,
Mhm.
just absolutely in love with this world. So that was really cool. We went to Route 66 Steakhouse.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Where else would you eat in Switzerland? Why not go somewhere that's America themed
Mhm.
and have some steak? They do have horse on menus there, which I didn't know.
Did you have any horse?
No, I wanted to, but we just didn't have the opportunity. Because it was like, all right, I'm at a steakhouse. Am I going to go all in and just get a horse steak and then be stuck with that horse steak? Or like, I want to try horse to say I've eaten horse.
But then that's like the thing you have to eat.
to tease people
Yeah.
that like horses. Just one of those things. You want to be like a boy. Like,
Mhm.
I've actually eaten one of those.
Okay, great. Thanks, man.
But then, yeah, you'd much rather just give me my New York strip, give me my cow. Safe bet. I have my meat. I didn't sleep last night, so I'm not in a mood to try to eat a horse steak.
Mm-mm. That takes a certain amount of like energy and juice. It'd be like, hey, can I have the horse, please?
Yes. So next morning we wake up, we go to a demolition site for Keybag. You go because he didn't sleep for consecutive nights, since he also works at night and he was traveling with us all day. He slept through his alarm. So Angel and I showed up at this job site without Hugo, our guide. And fortunately, the foreman comes over, doesn't speak English, but knows why we're kind of there. He's like, oh, you guys here for pictures? Kind of making the picture. And we're like, yes, yeah. Lets us in on site, just says, be careful. And then lets us take pictures of whatever the heck we want. And he comes over with his Translate app. He's like, I see on his Translate app, sorry, my English is really bad. And so and then the next one, he's like, welcome to my job site on his phone. And I'm like, this is awesome. I love these people out here. They're so friendly.
Is that the guy you posted Angel talking to where
Yeah.
they both knew 2 languages, but none of them overlapped?
Oh, and then they figured out one kind of knew Spanish and then Angel knew Spanish, so they could kind of communicate. But it's really funny watching 2 people that don't speak the same language communicate, because the hand signals are just all over the place, because you can't communicate words anymore. So you have to try to act things out the best you can. It's a treat watching 2 people communicate.
I love that.
Like that. So we saw that project. The guy was a 40-something year operator, an absolute wizard at taking this building down. I could watch. I like the big demolition because the awe, the scale, the challenge. I like all that. But the smaller demolition projects are more satisfying because you can see more get done in a shorter time frame.
There's a little bit more instant gratification.
Yes. Yeah. So like in the morning, in the hour and a half we were there, you get to see a pretty good sized chunk of building disappear and get completely pulverized to nothing by this massive Hitachi demolition machine. So we got to see Keybag. We went to another Eberhard job, hung out at a coffee shop in Zurich, of course, fancy coffee, sue me. Caught up on work, which was really nice. And then from there, got on a train, went through Basel to Colmar, France. So that ended our Switzerland part of our journey and began our France, Germany part of the journey that included Liebherr. So Liebherr picks us up, Colmar, France, Google it.
Train ride.
Colmar, France, one of the most delightful towns I've ever been to. Unbelievably beautiful. Just like you picture small French town, that is it to a T. So we get to Colmar. We have dinner at like 10 p.m. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I eat at like 5. I don't like eating before I go to bed. I don't like having this big, heavy meal before I go to bed. But what do you do in France? Apparently you have these big, heavy meals.
When in France.
When in France. So we wake up, I run through the French countryside, through French farmland in the morning. You run through the town, the whole town smells of pastries. You're just like, this is so ridiculous.
Am I in a book right now?
I cannot believe I'm here right now. We go first to Liebherr's Excavator factory. And our tour guide had worked there for 30 years and knew everything about the facility. And it's where they make their track excavators and their demolition excavators. They're smaller construction excavators. So we got to see where the steel goes in at one end, and then they cut everything out, they weld everything, inspect, clean everything, paint everything, and then it goes down to assembly. And so steel sheets go in at one end. It's all European steel, and Liebherr excavators come out at the other end. And then we got to go to the old part of the plant where the mining excavators used to be, and that's where the demolition machines are made. And they only make a few of them. And they had some big ones in there, some really, really, really big ones. And it was cool to see. And the unique thing about the Liebherr machines, and they told us this, was every single one is made to order. So they don't make machines in a speculative sense.
Just to have a stock of them.
No.
Okay.
So every single machine has a buyer, and every single machine is just a little bit different from the last.
Based on the needs of the buyer.
Exactly. And they said that's a big thing, is we will customize the machine however they want it customized. It doesn't matter. Whatever they want, we'll do. So they customize almost every single machine.
That's really cool.
And they'll paint it even whatever color you want at the factory.
This is just one less thing to worry about, once you get it on your job site or in your yard.
It's better because typically a lot of times they'll ship, you go buy a 336 excavator from Caterpillar, then the dealer paints it. A lot of times they're just going to paint over. You're never going to be able to do.
They're not going to take apart all the parts.
Exactly. You're not going to be able to paint a machine as well as you can paint it at the factory. And they can custom paint it at the factory in the factory type setting. Not only that, but say if this machine is working by the ocean or on a barge, that you can do a corrosion resistant paint, for example. Or we know this machine is being shipped overseas and it's going to be on a boat. So we're going to apply this wax to the paint to prevent it from corroding unnecessarily while it's being shipped. It's just the details like that are just, it's so German and engineered.
Yeah.
And everything is just so clever. You're like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you use the corrosion resistant paint based on where the machine's working? Yeah, obviously. It's every single machine is built for the exact application it's going to be working in, which is really cool. So we got to see all of that. And then we got to go out back, run one of their new Liebherr excavators, which was a treat, a real big treat.
Had you been in a Liebherr before?
I've never actually run a Libero, and it was unbelievably smooth. So that was fun. And then we had lunch at a castle up on the hill, a picnic.
Like you do in
Well,
France.
among the vineyards. 'Cause
Yeah.
why not? And then we got back to our regular programming, and that was the mining excavator factory. Right next to the airport, the small airport in Colmar. And this is where they build anything from the 9100 up to the 9800, which is one of the biggest hydraulic excavators in the world. And it was spectacular, to say the least. I mean, just seeing, we were with the product manager of the factory of Liebherr mining excavators. And so he could tell you about every single machine. Oh yeah, this one's going to Russia. And you can tell it's going to Russia because these flaps on the exhaust, for example, so the heat doesn't get out. You're like, yeah, of course. Okay. Oh yeah, this one's definitely going to the United States because of this warning label. And everything about every single machine, like you could just point to a machine. So what is that going to be mining? Oh yeah, that's going to Indonesia to mine coal. Like everybody was so knowledgeable. It was so cool.
That's a pretty fascinating thing because not only do you have to be so knowledgeable about like the base product, which is its own challenge, but then understand like even like he's seeing differences while it's being, put together and being like, okay, I remember which one this is because, it has these changes.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty complex, man, to have all that kind of like rattling around in your head. That's wild.
It's so impressive to be with somebody that's so knowledgeable and passionate about what they do, whatever it is, just
anything. That's
anything.
Amazing.
So it was a treat, and the French that were just so laid back, and this was the first time they've let anybody photograph the factory apparently.
Oh yeah, okay,
which is
awesome.
Crazy. I have to get everything approved, but that's wild.
You still got to take the pictures.
Still got to take the pictures of some machines that don't technically exist yet, which they didn't really give us that big of a heads up. But afterwards, they're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, that machine doesn't exist." I'm like, oh yeah,
okay,
of course. And then we go to the back of the factory, and the back of the factory has a 9600 and a 9800 sitting there. And I thought we were going to go take some pictures and like, oh wow, cool, that's 9800. I mean, 9800. It's an 800 ton. It's just like
it's massive.
It's so I've never seen a hydraulic excavator that big. And then they're like, all right, we have our operator here for the 9600. Let's go on there and run it for a little bit. So we're in France. We're outside of the Liebherr mining excavator factory. I'm in the cab of a Liebherr 9600 on a pile of dirt, and surrounding the pile of dirt, vineyards, of course, for wine. And you're sitting there taking scoops of dirt and watching this beautiful, massive machine work. And you're just like, so this is interesting information. Like, this is an interesting day.
Yeah.
Okay, great. This is awesome. So got to photograph the machine in action, which was a treat. They were so friendly, so kind. They gave us any information we wanted to know. It was such a cool time.
Love that.
So that was Liebherr Mining Excavators. We drive 4.5 hours from Colmar to Memmingen, Germany. Stay there, drive up to Liebherr's wheeled excavator factory. And they made, what did they make there? It was mostly wheeled excavators that they made at this one. And then they made their haul trucks there. I feel like they made one other thing. Oh, they're material handlers. So we go there. The guy that gives us the tour, Hans, he was at Liebherr for over 50 years. Friends with Mr. Liebherr.
Yeah.
And he retired, and now he's come back to give tours. So that's how stoked on this place this guy is, and just knew everything again. And we start the tour at their training center. So everybody that works there undergoes 3 years of training.
Wow.
Yes. And training and trades are somewhat built into the German economy because the Germans understand that trades are important to our economy, unlike the United States. So they have a dedicated 3-year training program, which they'll spend a year in their training facility. They'll spend a year on the factory floor. They'll come back, spend another year doing more advanced stuff in the training facility, and then they go back and start working out in the factory, assembling equipment.
So in that scenario, are folks not like providing production value for 3 years or?
Yeah.
Geez.
I mean, they'll help in the factory.
Yeah, I guess true.
For a year, so it's not zero production value, but yeah, they invest in them for 3 years.
But the investment is certainly very high for what you're getting out of them that first chunk of time.
That's it. So we see that facility, and then we go to Mr. Liebher's original house, which is in the middle of the factory.
How old was the company?
It was started just after World War II.
Okay.
Because it was it was started to help rebuild Europe. So you had Europe that was obliterated by the war, lots of construction. So Mr. Libero built a small tower crane that was portable that you could assemble a house with and then tear it down super quick, take to the next site, set it up. And so they had one of his original tower cranes in like the lawn of his original house with the factory all the way around it. And the original wheeled excavator, Libero wheeled excavator, original Libero track excavator. It was super, super neat. We got to see the Libero wheeled excavator plant, material handlers, beautiful, beautiful facilities, unbelievable. And the fabrication part of the facility, they use 3 different ways of cutting parts depending on how precise the cutting needs to be. It'll either be plasma, it'll either be traditional just torch, or it'll be laser. And I have not seen laser like that before. So we got to see the machines. Then they paired us up with the Liebherr truck people. The Liebherr haul truck is new. They're very excited about it. And we got to see where the Liebherr truck's made. And then we got to go out to the purpose-built Liebherr haul truck test track. So it's like this massive concrete field, almost looks like an airport, with all of these tracks built into the concrete that simulate all these weird wear and tear things for the truck. And they have all these slopes, and it was wild. So they drive up in 2 trucks, like, all right, get in. So you get in and you're just like, you know, it'll shift you over to one side real quick, shift you over to the other side, shift you over to one side, and then you go over a bunch of bumps and you go up this hill and you're flying down the straight at full speed. And I was getting actually pretty motion sick because I get car sick. And so I for sure get haul truck sick too, because it was sickening.
Intense, yeah.
But that was the track where they did a lot of their testing to just basically break the trucks over and over and over again so that they could build the best truck they possibly could. And I told them it's a great time to get into the haul truck market, articulate truck market in the United States, because the 2 leading manufacturers of haul trucks in the United States have not done very well lately. The leading manufacturer has done very, 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 very not well. And everybody knows who that is. If you've ever run one of those trucks, I'm not going to say any names. It is painted yellow. They can't keep a transmission,
really,
to save their truck lives. And so I told Libero, I'm like, you guys can figure out how to service these things. You guys are rocking and rolling, man. So got to test out the truck, and then ate lunch at the Liebherr factory, got on a train, took it out to Munich, called it a day, called it a trip. And by calling it a trip, I mean Angel and I had lots of beer in Munich.
Yeah, as you should. You know, you set it up, I think, a couple of weeks before you even went, because we were talking about 75 hard. And you're like, well, I just want to drink beer in Germany when I go.
Yeah, well, it was going to work out timing-wise when I started, but then I screwed it up. And I couldn't restart it because I've always just wanted to go to Germany, to Munich, and say I would like a beer and to just get a big old stein of beer. And I didn't really appreciate how big the steins were going to be.
Yeah.
It's basically a pitcher of beer.
You actively have to drink it because that thing's going to get warm.
It's a pitcher. I mean, I was like, this is the size of a pitcher.
And like, how many do you want?
It was crazy.
Oh man, I love it.
So we had a great time.
Dude, that's a big one.
So I don't know if that was compelling content.
I mean, so many people ask about it. I think, especially with the hints you kind of put out there, just like on social media and whatever. Just like, here's this one cool thing I'm doing today, and it happens to be in Zurich or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think given like a full scale kind of rundown is pretty interesting. And also, like, there's a lot of people who listen to the podcast who don't get to travel that way, but are still going to find that stuff super fascinating. And now they get to watch it on the podcast or listen to it on the podcast, or if they want to learn even more, they can watch the vlog when those come out. Like, I think this was fun, man. Getting to hear the nitty gritty of it all.
Good. Well, I hope it was valuable. I didn't get into all the stupid things like me getting locked out on top of the hotel and Angel getting left in Germany, but we can get to those things later.
Yeah. Well, I will say, because this is related, we've gotten a good bit of feedback from folks reaching out about the podcast. A lot of people ask for Angel to be on the podcast.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he wants to be on the podcast.
I know. And so I'm like, what has to happen to guilt him, pressure him into doing it? Because a lot of people want to have Angel on the podcast.
If we drank, seriously.
But it has to be like the first part.
If we had beers, we'd be chilling.
There we go. There we go.
Warm them up with a beer before we start. Have another beer or two while we're podcasting.
It'd be a good time.
It'd be a really good time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So.
Well, I think that was great. Thanks for laying all that stuff out. I think for me, getting to hear just the difference in the way that you tell like these stories of like traveling outside of America versus, we talk a lot about your trips, here, just because, like you said, you spend a lot of time on the road and you're not necessarily like doing it with a deliverable in mind. It's like, we want to go see this thing. I'm going to take pictures because that's what I like to do. And yet I think for me, it's really fascinating to hear the differences between like those trips and, going abroad.
Yeah. I'm hoping to do quite a bit more of travel abroad because it's just so valuable for my understanding of the world, understanding of the industry, understanding of our business. It's just, there's so many benefits to it beyond, all right, I get cool pictures and I have these cool job site experiences. That's awesome. But from a big picture standpoint, it's crazy valuable. So hopefully later this year, we're going to go back to Europe to go to Bauma, which will be fun.
Where's that?
In Munich.
Oh, in Munich. Okay.
Yeah. And then Canada for sure. And beyond that, I'm not totally sure yet.
We've got some folks to see in Canada. Been putting that off for a couple of years.
I've put that one off since COVID, because I was hoping to do it in 2020, and then that went out the window.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that's the episode on Europe.
Yeah. Thanks for being here, Aaron.
Thanks for having me. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it. We'll see you guys on the next one. Stay dirty, everybody.